recognize almost everyone, having met you at Rotary before. I am not a Rotarian, but I consider myself a friend of Rotary. I have attended many of your events. I know many of you personally. I have a lot of admiration and respect for what Rotarians do in a community and in our world. And actually had someone stay at my home the other day from Tanzania. She was here getting trained in some activism work. And she was a Rotarian from Vancouver. She wore a t-shirt and I said, oh, you belong to Rotary. So it was really exciting to see that it's all over the place and that people are doing good things. So thank you for your service. Really appreciate it. I'm going to, can I share my screen? Do I have access to sharing my screen? I'm going to go straight into sharing screen.
Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay. I've just basically created a small presentation. And I'm going to talk a little bit through it and give you some ideas of what it is that I do and how I do it. All right, there, you go away with the Zoom, go away with the email, and go into this. All right. So when I started thinking about how I could do this presentation, I thought, okay, so I've got 20 minutes, maybe a few minutes for question and answer. And it's a pretty big topic. And I really didn't want it to be tips and tricks because anybody can look that up on YouTube, you know, how to declutter, how to organize. Well, okay, you start with this, you do this next, and then you do that. What I really wanted to do was kind of bring in some of my background in coaching, which is basically asking a series of questions. Where to start is really about curiosity. It's really looking at why we have the things we have, why they're set up the way they're set up, what maybe has transpired so that we've gotten to the place we are, whether that is organized or unorganized. And I really just want to take us through a series of questions that people can then ask themselves as they're contemplating decluttering, downsizing, and organizing, so that it's a very personal process. And basically, I'm an accountability partner. When I'm working with my clients, I'm just there to ask questions, get curious, and have the client think through all of the things. I'm definitely not someone who's going to come in and just say, you need to get rid of all these things. That is not how it works. And I think that is a fear for a lot of people, is that I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be told that I can't have these things, that they're not important. And that is so far from the truth, because they're your things. Every last thing that you have in your home is yours, and it has a story. It has emotional resonance. And it may be that it's a positive or a negative resonance, but either way, I need to ask the questions to get you to a place of deciding whether it is or is not important to you and why it's in your home. So now let's see, my little Zoom thing is covering up my, oh, hang on, let's see if I can do it that way. There we go. So first question to ask yourself really when you're contemplating organizing or decluttering is why? Why is it that you need to do it? And everybody's going to have a different level of clutter. As you look at this image, feel free to put comments in the chat, but think about what comes up for you when you see this image. Do you think, yeah, that's okay, I can still get to the washing machine, not a problem? Or, might be a little tough to find my tools when it's time to make that repair. It might be, how is it that I still have a high chair and my child is now 12? So, there's all these things that come into what's the motivation for getting organized. If this works for you, then I come in and I just say, okay, there's a pretty good chance this doesn't, which is why you've called me to say, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I can't do the tasks that I need to do because there's always something in the way. And often the underlying motivation for people is frustration, or feeling overwhelmed, or just that anxiety around, I can't do the things I want to do because I can't get at my things, because I don't know where they are, or I don't know how to access them because they're somewhere underneath something else, and everything feels hard. So those are one of the ways to think about why you're doing it. Now, not everyone has this kind of clutter. Could be from the picture at the front, which is just, a bit of a messy desk, some extra papers lying about. Maybe your kitchen cabinets just have a few too many appliances. And you just think, yeah, I just need a little bit more space to breathe, to feel like I can get access to my things. So that's one thing to think about. The other thing is, in terms of factors like internal or external, it's, are you living with other people? That would be an external factor. So is the clutter yours or someone else's? What's going on in your home that may be the reason for the clutter? We all go through transitions. I am a professional organizer and I tend to be fairly organized, but there are times in my home where the clutter does get out of hand, where I feel a little bit overwhelmed because I've been working a lot, or the kids have come home and a lot of their stuff is lying around, or it's just been a really busy time and I haven't gotten to the dishes, or, it happens to all of us to have periods in our time where we're in transition, or there's an event that's happening, which is creating some extra level of time constraint. So we can't get to putting our things away or knowing what to do with them. So that can also be an external factor. Internal factors around clutter or being disorganized can be things like mental health states. People with ADHD who have a difficulty because they're neurodivergent, remembering where they put things, or remembering that they even have the thing. So they buy another one, and then there's an overwhelm around too many things. Or it's just the idea of getting really distracted by really fun projects and having a lot of project stuff, but then never quite finishing the project. So all of a sudden you have this extra stuff in your home. People who struggle with depression, people who struggle, who are on the autism spectrum, people who have disabilities and maybe have mobility issues. And so they can't physically organize or declutter the way they'd like to, and they need more support. So there's a lot of things at play that I want to kind of remind people to be kind to themselves. It's very easy to shame ourselves or to feel embarrassed about the clutter in our home, or the fact that maybe we aren't as organized as we'd like to be. But all of that comes into the big picture of our own mental health state, our natural inclinations. It's one of my values. I love organizing. So of course I enjoy it, but not everybody does that. Lots of people are really much better at art than I am. And so they're going to spend their leisure time doing beautiful sculptures or paintings. I'm organizing my closet for the 10th time. Could be a problem. So, it's all in how we perceive the function of organizing as well. The other big question to ask ourselves is, what's the end result we want? Like, this is a process. Organizing is an ongoing process. Decluttering is an ongoing process. I do it all the time. Like, I'm constantly going in and doing a little area here or a little area there, or looking in my cupboard once again to say, why do I have these? What are these? Oh yeah, they're for making French onion soup. They're from the 70s. I think my mom gave me these 20 years ago. Haven't used them. I think they can go. So it's about deciding, what's the process? Is the process to just get rid of stuff because you feel overwhelmed, or is the process to thoughtfully look at what you have, why you have it, and whether you're going to use it or not? So, it may be that the end result is just, I want to have more space for the things I actually like. If you can't get in your garage to get at your bike to be able to go cycling, because you have to get through 8 boxes of things that you haven't unpacked from your last move, then that gets in the way of your value of exercise and freedom and wanting to explore. So when the clutter starts to impede on your value system, on the things that you enjoy doing, that's when you want to ask yourself the questions about it. What are these things providing me? What am I getting from all this stuff that surrounds me? So that's the piece around kind of asking yourself, why do I want to do this? The next thing to get curious about is your actual possessions, the actual things you have. This is a picture of one of the spare rooms in my home. So of course, when the lockdown hit, could not go to the gym or the fitness place that I go to, and everything went online. So I took one of the rooms that we had. The kids have all kind of flown the coop. We're down to one child, so we have a couple extra rooms now. You can't see it in the picture, but there's a Murphy bed in this picture on the left. There's a Murphy bed that you can pull down and turn into a day bed, like a sleeping spot for someone who's a guest, put it up against the wall and you have a nice big open space. So I created a space to do my yoga and my Pilates and my workouts, because to me it was important to stay physically active during the pandemic in order to stay mentally in a good place. So the fact is, I have now left that room nice and open because I call it a transition room. Sometimes there's a bed in it with guests. Sometimes I'm in there doing workouts. Sometimes it's full of boxes because I've worked with a client who wants to get rid of things and I take them all home in order to distribute them. So it's a transition space. And for me, that supports this first question: do the items that surround you support or detract from how you want to live your life? Well, this room supports how I want to live my life because it gives me access to things that are important to me, but it also supports my business and it supports one of my values, which is connection and generosity, because then I can take things and distribute them to people for free. I can host people in my home that need a place to stay. I can do a lot of things that meet my needs and my values by keeping this room tidy and clear. And so that's one of the reasons that looking at what we own can help us decide how do we want to use those things. So the question around possessions being beautiful, practical, or sentimental. I mean, I think there's a William Morris quote around, if it's not beautiful or useful, why is it in your home? This is important to think about. And beautiful is all in the eye of the beholder. I mean, some people, it could be, a picture their child drew and it's on the fridge and it's not beautiful to anyone else, but it's beautiful to them. And so that's important and it's a beautiful memory and great. Is it practical? Well, most of us need forks to eat with, plates to eat off of, a couple of pots and pans. Like there's lots of things that are practical in our homes that we need. And it really is at the point of practicality, how many of those practical things do we need? So it's really thinking about minimizing to the necessary amount of things that you need. Because what happens is, depending on the age group that you're in, I know that for the people that I downsize who are in their 70s, 80s, or 90s, to them, everything was practical because they came from an era where you needed to have things just in case. You needed to keep all that stuff, all those jars, all that tin foil, everything, the newspapers even. Well, they could be useful for something. And so it's about recognizing that practical has a different definition for everyone. So what's practical to you as someone who is an artist is going to be different from what's practical to me, who, for example, with cooking, I am not a baker. I have a few small supplies so that if I need to bake a cake or I need to whisk something, I have a few things, but I do not have a huge supply of baking materials because it's not one of my, it's not one of my activities. But I have clients who have entire cupboards full of baking supplies because they really value baking and it's important to them. And it's something they do on a regular basis. Well, I'm all for that. Have a whole cupboard of baking if that's what you like and do. Fabulous. Let's organize it nicely so you can access it. So it really is about finding out from yourself, what are the things that I like to do? What are the things I value? What are the things that are important to me? And am I honoring those by giving them the best real estate? Can I access them? Can I find them? Do I have the things I need for those activities? And then look at the excess, the things that you're not doing. Like I went rock climbing with a friend 15 years ago. Loved it. Wish I could do it every weekend, but I don't have the adventurous spirit to actually do it on my own. And he moved. And so I had a pair of shoes he gave me, rock climbing shoes. They were in my cupboard for years. I went twice and then I had them there forever. And I thought, I'm going to put these back out into the world because someone else can use them. I'm not using them. They need to be worn by someone. That's their lot in life. So I try to explain to people, if you're not using it, then that item is not, it's not meeting its purpose. So if you anthropomorphize it almost, it's like, that really pretty party dress, it needs to go to a party. If you're not wearing it, it's just sitting in your closet, really sad. that dress is sad. It needs to go to a party. So it's about putting things back out into the world so that they can be used by the people who might want them. And we might get into it later about like, well, how do I get it out to the world? How do I make sure it gets the right people? That's a whole other challenge. However, the part that you want to really focus on is if I'm not using it, if I'm not honoring it, if I'm not paying attention to it or spending time with it, why is it in my home? Why is it taking up space in my home? The sentimental piece, of course, is a little tricky because sometimes we have things that we're feeling sentimental about that might take up more space than other things. I mean, if it's a box of cards, it's one thing. If it's an entire basement of, mementos, that's a different thing. So it's about really going through the process of reading the things. Like, honestly, I spent the last, I would say, 2 years downsizing my mementos. I actually had every letter that my first husband wrote to me while I was in Africa, and every letter that I'd written to him, because of course, when he left, he didn't bring his letters with him. So I had all of them. So I went through them all. I read what I wrote to him. I read what he wrote to me. And then I burned most of them because I really didn't want my children reading the letters that their rather lonely 24-year-old dad wrote at the time to his girlfriend in Africa. You catch my drift. No one needs to see those letters. So I basically decided, I read them, I went down memory lane, and then I burned them. I kept one of each, one from me, one from him, one from my grandma, and there you go. And now I have my mementos.
Not really. Not really good. And I had to go.
Oh, there's somebody who's, oh, there we go. All right. So basically, as you think through your possessions, are they beautiful? Are they practical? Are they sentimental? If they are none of those things, you really have to think about why they're in your home. And that's the important thing about minimizing, is just asking yourself the questions and then deciding, yeah, maybe I don't need this many of this thing. Maybe I could just, if somehow I needed to find one of these, I could borrow it, or I could buy another one. I don't need to hold it just in case when it's taking up a lot of space, because it often takes up emotional space, right? That's the next piece. When you intentionally minimize your stuff, you actually clear a lot of emotional space. It gives you more room to then have access to the things you like to do, or have access to the things that are of value to you. So if you get the stuff out of your way that's taking up valuable space physically and emotionally, then you're going to have more space for the things that matter. And that's a really, really important piece to this, is to get curious about what you value and how you can focus on that rather than all the other things. So this is a picture of a closet in a room that I created for an 80, I think she was 84, an 84-year-old woman. I was moving her from her apartment in a senior's home to a very small. One of the things that was happening with her is she was starting to have a bit of dementia. And she had been on the hoarding spectrum when she moved from her very big home to the apartment. I didn't know her at the time, but her son told me about it. She'd been hoarding for a long, long time. She had a lot of things. And so when I started working with her, I was helping her unpack the boxes that she hadn't unpacked for almost a year since moving into her smaller apartment. The woman had a lot of clothing. But here's the thing, even with dementia, she could tell me a story about each piece. As I was unpacking it and I was hanging it up or saying, do you still need this? Do you want this? She could remember every piece of clothing. She could tell me stories about where she wore it, where she got it. Like, her mind was still very clear around things from the past, and her clothing were a really big piece of history for her. So when we were downsizing to get her into this much smaller room, like going from a 2-bedroom apartment to 1 room, like it's literally just a couch, a bed, a closet, and there's a little bathroom. It was quite a daunting process. But what I decided to do with her is I said, I know you love your clothing and I know they have an important piece in your history. Would you like us to have it be an open closet? Because really it was just this little tiny wardrobe that they had in her room. I said, because we can get you that. And that way you can see your clothing and they can remind you of those good times, even though now, you're in a home. And she said, yeah, that would be great. And so this is the part where knowing the emotional resonance to something can help you make decisions around what is important to you. And so this was clearly really important to her. And, you know, as much as an organizer, my preference would be put that behind doors. I don't want to see that every day. But for her, she would wake up in the morning and she would be able to see her clothing and decide what to wear. And when she was starting to be more and more incapable of remembering things, I know that that was the one thing that she could look at, and it gave her a sense of continuity. And I think that's the thing about each of our homes, each of our own experiences. We have to do what works for us, which is why when I go in and work with people, I don't say anything other than, so tell me about how you use this space. Tell me about how you want this to work for you, and let's come up with a system. Because I'm not there to make you downsize your stuff for the sake of getting rid of it. I'm there to help you downsize your stuff so that you can get to the real you. You can get to the place where you enjoy what you do. You can find what you like and not be frustrated by it. So for her, it was easy. She could see her clothing and then she could pick what she was going to wear that day. And that was really helpful to her. So, you know, the feelings that come up when you consider decluttering or parting with items, I mean, some of the feelings might be, you know, worry that you'll need it again, maybe some anxiety. There might be some guilt, you know, so-and-so gave me that. What if they come over and they don't see it anymore? So there's ways that we have to really understand that these are valid things that happen. We have little voices in our head that say, are you sure? You know, this was really important. These are letters. These are letters from 30 years ago. You should keep these letters. You know, at a certain point, you have to decide, well, why am I keeping them? Who are they for? Well, the letters were for me. They're my letters. Now I can do what I want with them. Nobody else needs these letters. These are things that I can make a decision about. So when the internal voices come up or the feelings come up, often behaviors follow very quickly after. So, you know, if we feel guilty or anxious, there's a pretty good chance we're going to procrastinate. I don't want to deal with that right now. I'm not feeling comfortable. So then we put it off, and then we put it off. And then all of a sudden there's more stuff because that's the thing. It's almost like it multiplies in the dark, right? You think, I thought I just tidied this up 2 days ago, and now it looks like nothing happened. So we live in a society of consumerism. Even the best of us are going to need to shop. We need things. Now, sometimes the things we think we need are really just things we want. And so it's, again, a question around, what am I doing when I'm buying this thing, when I am collecting this thing? Again, it's an emotional thing. Sometimes it may be that we're feeling sad or a little bit disconnected. And, you know, the word retail therapy was invented for a reason, because what happens is it fills a little something in us. It's a little hit of adrenaline that says, oh, I feel a little bit better now. But then it doesn't often last very long, because then you get it home, you think, where do I put it? Oh, I already had some of these. And then it starts to be a cycle of guilt, and then resentment, and then sadness. And then it just keeps going around. And then you just get stuck in this place. So really, the idea here is to just be curious. I'm going to use that word a lot, just being curious about what the feeling is that comes up when we are considering parting with something, or when we are considering buying or acquiring something. Just catch yourself in the moment. And sometimes it's a thing you have to do. Like, we have to buy food, but do we have to buy enough food so that when the apocalypse comes, we can feed the whole neighborhood? Like, it's, you know, there's the just in case versus the just in time. And lots of people, especially of a certain age, have the just in case mentality. So we do tend to fill up our cupboards. And I'm thinking of the early parts of the pandemic when people went just a little cuckoo over toilet paper, because that was the just in case. That was the fear. That was the, you know, the internal voice saying, there's a lot of things you can probably do and get by, but not having toilet paper isn't one of them. So people got really worried about it. So, you know, and that was a behavior. That was a behavior based on the feeling of anxiety. So anyway, that's one of the ways that I would say to get clear on some of these questions around your emotions when it comes to your possessions. Getting intentional about our decisions regarding the items. So this is a punch bowl. I know Heidi's going to love this story because it's actually at Heidi's house right now. I will get to the point of how it ended up there. So I wrote a blog post about this punch bowl because I was helping my sister organize her home. She's a very busy teacher and she was feeling overwhelmed. So I went for a visit and we spent some time together and we started pulling things out of the cupboard. She pulled out this box. She said, "Oh, I don't know what to do with this." I said, "Well, what is it?" She said, "It's a punch bowl." I said, "Oh, where'd you get it?" "Mom gave it to me." "Oh, Mom gave it to you. I wonder whose punch bowl it is." She goes, "Well, I think it's like grandma's or something, but I don't know. But she gave it to me because we got a pool and she thought I could do pool parties and have punch." She said, "I haven't opened it. It's been in the box for, and it was like in a brown box, like not the actual box it came in, just some brown box, wrapped up in newspapers." She said, "I haven't used it." I said, "Okay, I'm going to take it home with me. I like having parties. Maybe I'll use it. And then if I don't, I will discard it because I'm good at that. I'm good at making the decisions." So I brought it home. Well, 3 months later, it was still in the back of my closet in the same box. So I pulled it out and I said, all right, now I have to actually unwrap it all and make sure that I see it. Because if I don't see it, then I won't use it. So I unwrapped it all, put it on the counter and looked at it for about another month. And then I thought, why do I have this punch bowl? Why is it in my house? And so I wrote this long piece around the perceived identity of, I'm the kind of person who should use a punch bowl. I love having parties. I used to have parties with 30 people in my house. Punch bowl is a great idea. That fits my identity of someone who hosts parties. And I love vintage things. And it's so pretty. I really like it. It's very fun. And all the explanations and, oh, and Mom, it's probably grandma's and I should keep it because it's a vintage thing from my family. It's been passed down. And then I realized, no, none of that is important. I'm not using it. So instead of just giving it away, I had a punch bowl party. I invited a bunch of people to bring over what they wanted to get rid of, which I then all donated off to a charity. But my friend who came to the party said, "Hey, I could use a punch bowl. We actually use it every Christmas. When we have a family gathering, we borrow my in-laws. So I'd love to have one." I said, "Great." So now I get to see the punch bowl when I visit my friend Heidi. The funniest part of all this is when my mom read the blog, which was part of my newsletter, she wrote to me and she said, "I bought that at a garage sale." She said, "It has no significance whatsoever in our family." And it just made me laugh because I thought I fell into the same trap that most people fall. I made assumptions. I made assumptions about the value of it, and then I held on to it for the wrong reasons. So making decisions intentionally by getting curious is really the way to go. So just this series of questions: why do I have it? Do I need it? How many times do we have something we don't even need it? What could I use instead? You know what I did with the punch bowl when I had the punch bowl party? I made a salad in it and I put all of the toppings for the salad in the cups. So you could use things in different ways, so you don't have to have one of each thing. You can just say, this thing is multi-purpose. I'm going to use it for multiple things. And then you can get rid of the things you don't actually need. Again, the same question: is it practical, beautiful, or sentimental? Does it have a home? If your things don't have homes, you're going to have clutter. And if you have so many things that there's no more room in your cupboards or anywhere, then there is no home for it. And it's just going to sit out and it's going to look at you a lot. And you're going to look at it and then you're going to feel stressed about it. So finding a home for the thing is a very important piece. But that means you have to then get into the cupboards and get in under the bed and get in the closets to make space for the things that are important and get rid of the things that are not, so that the home is clear for your thing to live there. Is it accessible based on how often you use it? If you have to get on your hands and knees every time you use your crock pot to reach in under the cupboard and pull out the other 3 appliances, but you're using your crock pot every week, well, put your crock pot in a more accessible place. Shift things into the best real estate. The things you use the most should be the most accessible. They should have the best real estate in your home so that you can have access to them. And it isn't anxiety producing every time you go to get it because you think, oh, it's going to take me 10 minutes just to get at that thing. It should be right there at your reach. In French, we say à ta portée, right there. is it worthy of taking up space in my home and my mind? Again, it comes down to the value system. Do I value it? I mean, it's one thing to say, I have my mother's wedding dress, but if it's in the back of your garage in a box that you haven't looked at in 30 years, you're not really valuing your mother's wedding dress very much. There's a whole other reason you've still got it, and you need to look at that. So if
Leanne,
yes.
may I stop you? We actually need to ask questions and we have to finish within a certain time period. So do you know how much longer you're going to take?
I'm actually at the end. I've got maybe 2 more minutes.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So yeah, so the value piece, really important. All right, I'm going to go forward. So I just thought I'd throw in a couple of before and afters just to give you an idea of how I use values with a client to get them organized. So I had a client, again, in an old age home. She was moving to a much smaller place. She's an artist and a crafter. It's what she values the most. And we had this long conversation about what to bring with her, because she wasn't going to have enough room for everything. And in talking to her, I realized she really valued art and crafting. So I basically said, well, how about we turn your room into a craft station? Like, your room is for crafting and you just happen to sleep in there. And she laughed and she said, that sounds fantastic. And so we created a craft station for her, my husband and I. So one whole half of her room is literally an organized craft station with a nice big space for her to work. We organized all of her tools and her supplies so she could have easy access to them. She could roll her wheelchair up and do her work. And she was so thrilled. And I guess the point of what I'm trying to end with here is, this is an 83-year-old woman who has now moved into the final home she will ever know. It's a room. It's one room. And yet she said, it's the best craft station I've ever had. What I'm asking all of you to do is not wait. Don't wait for the best thing you've ever had. Don't wait for the best kitchen you've ever had, the best garage you've ever had. Don't wait for the things that you know you value. You can start now. You can start to minimize now. You don't have to wait till it's forced on you because you're moving. It can be a process that you start slowly and work towards by asking these questions that we just talked about, doing it a little bit at a time. And I can tell you right now, you will not regret it. There are very few things that you will regret when you downsize and minimize the things in your life that don't serve you. So there you go. I will do one last thing. I'll just give you a little shot of my details. The final question you can ask yourself is, if I decide to downsize and minimize, who am I going to call? You're welcome to get in touch with me. I can chat with you and tell you if I'm the right person for you. I can also point you in the right direction if there are other organizers who might be more in keeping with your style. There's an entire association of organizers with a lot of experience, and we can certainly help you when it's time for you to do some downsizing.
Thank you. Before we move to questions for our speaker, Lianne, is she still there? Oh, there she is.
Yeah, I'm still here.
So, questions?
Can I ask?
Yes, Guru, go ahead.
What does one do to unclutter the mind? Can you extrapolate the same thing for one's mind that is cluttered?
Interesting question.
We have to have a PhD thesis on that. Go ahead, Lianne.
Well, Guru, I think that the things are often very related. So in the coaching that I do, often pulling apart the stories that we tell ourselves is the way that we unclutter our mind. So it's that often there are things that we say to ourselves or ways that we speak to ourselves in our mind that get in the way of who we really are, because they're not often very true. They're old stories. They're old stories maybe from things we were told as children, or they're stories that we get told by society. And often they're very untrue. And so uncluttering our mind is about getting really clear on what we value, who we are, what's important to us, and then being able to live courageously from that place. And knowing what you value is often important. So, one of the things I do with coaching is I do work with people to get clear on their values, and therefore they can start to live their life from that place. And so that is one way to unclutter your mind, is to, first of all, be very kind to yourself and know that a lot of people struggle. A lot of people have cluttered minds. It's very common for us to have a lot of things going on in there that don't need to be there, because they're just stories. They're untrue stories that we tell ourselves. And so, that would be my answer to that.
I thought you might say seek a yogi or something.
There's nothing wrong with seeking help, whether that's a yogi, a therapist, a good friend, a coach. Absolutely. Someone you trust. There has to be some trust. And then you can have a real conversation with someone, and vulnerability is important to be able to get underneath those things.
Well, coming to the topic you discussed, what can you do to a chronic hoarder? I can't throw anything out, from a pinhead to paper that's somebody's handwriting is there. And that's the clutter accumulates.
That's when you hire Lianne.
Well, or someone who deals with challenging disorganization. There are definitely areas that are more challenging than others. And if letting go of everything is a challenge, then there's a deeper thing there. And we can certainly discuss that, Guru. I could certainly have a conversation with you about it and point you in the right direction. There are specialists who work in that area. But it can be very challenging. And I'm sorry to hear that you're struggling with that. But you're welcome to reach out to me and I can talk to you about it, or I can put you in touch with some people who work with chronic disorganization.
Thank you. It hit me because I'm moving in 4 days, and I realize how many stuff that I have, especially papers.
Yeah, that can be very challenging. I hear you.
So, Lianne, I have a question.
Yes.
So this is related to, like, suppose you have a client, and I'm sure you have this has happened to you, I'm sure, where the client is not incapable, right? But they have some issues where they cannot let go of their stuff. The reason I'm asking this, I have lots of clients, and in fact, I have several clients who own several houses, and they're all filled with junk. And the reason they are able to maintain that lifestyle is because they have financial ability. So obviously, it is some mental health issue. It's not something a regular person, I wouldn't say regular, like most people would not do. So how do you connect with those clients, and how do you build trust? Because I think trust is very important to everyone when it deals with personal items.
Yeah, I mean, trust is probably the underlying foundation of being able to work with people when it comes to their personal possessions, because they're very personal and private, and people often feel embarrassed or ashamed. And so you have to really come at it from a place of non-judgment. And again, the curiosity piece, it's all about asking enough questions to understand the underlying issues. So, and again, this is a process where the person has to be ready. You know, when you watch these shows and they call it an intervention, or they say, we're going to come in and we're going to do it for you. It doesn't work that way, because if you're not addressing the underlying issue, it's just going to repeat. It's just going to cycle through. Bye, Homer. And so basically it comes down to building a relationship, slowly getting to a place of trust and understanding what's holding them back from letting go of the things, or what's creating the need for accumulation. So it's like a two-pronged thing, and you have to really work carefully with them, which is why it's a very long process. And the challenge is that often, and you're speaking of someone who may have financial abilities, but the challenge with a lot of people is they don't have the financial ability to pay an organizer when they need an organizer. And so they just stay in a very difficult place. So it's not uncommon for organizers to do volunteer work, or we often, to our own detriment, lower our rates because we just so desperately want to help people, because we know that it is good for mental health to be less cluttered and to alleviate your possessions that get in the way. So yeah, it really is just about building relationships and finding someone that they can work with. And it's only if they choose to. Like, again, it can't be an intervention. It has to be them wanting to do it. And so it's about maybe finding ways to describe to them how it could benefit them, ways that it could benefit them to do it, and then finding someone that they could work with, and then going from there.
Thank you, Lianne. Any other questions? No questions?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Heather.
It's been very, very useful and instructional for me, Lianne. It's brought me to tears because I am one of those chronic hoarders, as you probably know. And I am very grateful for your information. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so glad you came, Heather.
Okay, as we have no other questions, Virginia, would you like to thank our guests?
I would love to. First of all, I want to know how she got in my basement to take those pictures. I don't understand it. I think you mentioned a couple of things here that I think are particularly interesting. And one is be kind to yourself as you're trying, if you're doing this for yourself, or, and it's be kind to yourself. And I think trust yourself, trust that you can look at this yourself, or find someone who you can develop trust in. I love if I'm not using it or enjoying it, then why am I keeping it? So Art, all those old drivers in your garage, I think my dad had about 20 of them. So I think you can part with some of them.
Well, I just repaired one with some crazy glue last week. I've been using it.
And I think the other thing, one other thing you touched on was you touched on a lot of things, but it's when let's even push this to consumerism. When you're about to buy something, what am I going to do? Like, why am I buying it? Do I have something already like this? And if it's, if I'm feeling sad and buy an ice cream or something. It's just, I shouldn't be so flippant, but I think thinking about why we're buying something, because I have a whole closet full of winter coats, and I think it's time to get down to just a few, but I'm one of those closet people. So thank you so much. I think it just brought up a lot of thoughts and a lot of interesting things. So thank you.
You're very welcome. If you'd like, I can send a PDF of the presentation, and then that way the questions are there if people want to look at them again, and they're just tools to ponder.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Lianne, I might call you soon.
Okay.
Not for myself, because I'm the opposite. I don't clutter. I regularly declutter, but I have some clients who might like you.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. I appreciate the referrals.